Historic docking, the first docking between a Russian and American vehicle in 20 years, harkening back to the Apollo-Soyuz mission of 1975. Commander of the shuttle Atlantis, Hugh Gibson, was able to fly a nearly flawless approach and able to contact the MIR docking mechanism ever so gently. Shortly thereafter, he opened the hatch and shook hands with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Dezhirov, thus going in the history books as the first portion of the first phase, which the U.S. and Russians hope will end up delivering some sort of international space station, perhaps in the year 2002. Folks here at NASA are very excited and elated and a bit relieved, as a matter of fact. This is a high-stakes mission for NASA. Their support of the space station is considered a high-stakes effort, and they're under criticism in Congress for their budget. Let's take a look at some of the images from today.
Drift at the point of contact between the two.
41 hours after the orbital chase began, and the space shuttle Atlantis crept slowly but surely toward its rendezvous with spacefaring history.
Houston Atlantis, 30-foot check.
Just as he did hundreds of times in NASA simulators, Atlantis Commander Hugh Gibson flew a nearly flawless approach to the Russian space station Mir. The Russian-built docking ring proved up to the task, and the two vehicles became one, creating the largest satellite ever to orbit the Earth.
Houston Atlantis, we have capture.
It was perfect. It was really perfect. And it was not an easy job to do.
This is a dawn of a new era. It truly is.
Gibson earned the honor of opening the hatch and shaking hands with Mir-18 Commander Vladimir Dezhirov.
You guys are upside down.
Whichever way you looked at it, the meeting of 4 cosmonauts and 6 astronauts in Mir's main core was a time for bear hugs and broad smiles.
Hello, everybody's waving
looking
back.
And acting like tourists. Group posed for pictures and savored the moment.
That's great, darling.
It is the first of 7 shuttle dockings with Mir, the first phase of U.S. and Russian efforts to build an international space station.
This was one of our first steps. This is still very, very much in the beginning.
But before that can happen, the two craft will remain together for about 100 hours, and during that time there'll be an exchange of equipment and personnel, and a lot of scientific experiments will be underway. Dr. Norm Thagard, the NASA astronaut who's been on Mir since mid-March, was himself the guinea pig in some of his experiments, and some of the data will be collected while they're on orbit to be analyzed later once they get down to Earth. Jonathan?
Miles, this is a day of enormous accomplishment, but I have to ask about one small detail. They are in very cramped quarters in the Mir. There isn't any way to open up the window and get a lot of fresh air. They've been up there for a long time. What does it smell like in there when the hatch is open?
Well, you got to wonder. I'm sure it's a bit stale. Actually, I was talking to a cosmonaut a few months ago. I asked him that very question. It's a question we all want to know, of course. And he said that it smells more than anything like the chemical disinfectant which the cosmonauts use to wash up. They don't have a conventional water shower. They use something that would be like those wet naps to clean up. And that smell is what permeates through the Mir. I suppose after time you get used to it, however.
Now, we see those men meeting for the first time. Is there any health risk to men who've been isolated so long in space to the kind of bacteria that newcomers will be bringing into their midst?
Well, shuttle crews routinely before any launch are isolated for a full week. And part of that effort is so they don't get sick on orbit. But in this case, the other object was to make sure that they don't bring any germs or contagions up there that would cause some problems on Mir. Incidentally, small microbes are a real problem on space stations. They have to be real careful to clean up a lot to make sure that little spores don't get growing, and little biology projects and experiments that they didn't anticipate get underway.
Well, what about the experiments that they did anticipate? Can you tell us a little bit about the laboratory that they've brought up there and what they're hoping to accomplish?
Well, the Space Lab will be a little platform to take blood samples and other fluid samples from Norm Thagard and his 2 cosmonaut colleagues. And they're going to take a look at how the body assimilates drugs and how it adapts to zero-G. Calcium loss is an issue, the cardiovascular abilities. The astronauts and cosmonauts take great pains to exercise while they're on orbit, and it is the hope of scientists that this will alleviate the problems of muscle atrophy, which can occur in a weightless environment. All of these things will be looked at in the Space Lab, and then when they get down on the ground, they're going to take these guys off in couches. They're not going to stand up, so that they're going to preserve the integrity of their body situation, and they're going to take additional samples while they're on the ground. All of this, they hope, will give them sort of a baseline look at what happens to the human body in space, with an eye toward, lengthy missions to Mars and perhaps even beyond.
It is enormously ambitious and fascinating work. Miles O'Brien at the Johnson Space Center, thanks so much.
Thank you.
This race became more of a relay Thursday as American and Russian forces joined ranks. It has been 20 years now since Russian cosmonauts and American astronauts met in orbit. CNN's John Holloman reports the cooperative effort this time went off without a hitch.
The docking of the shuttle Atlantis and the Russian space station Mir came in right on schedule. Cameras on the shuttle were able to show us the Mir. Then cameras on Mir took a close look at the shuttle from above it. When the docking came, we looked from the side on your left and from a camera pointed into the middle of Mir's docking port on the right. These were the words which were waited for on the ground.
Houston, Atlantis, we have capture.
With that, the docking was underway.
Congratulations, Space Shuttle Atlantis, Space Station Mir. After 20 years, our spacecraft are docked in orbit again. Our new era of space exploration has begun.
For 2 hours, astronauts and cosmonauts made sure nothing was leaking, and then the hatches opened. And for the first time in 20 years, Americans and Russians on separate ships were shaking hands in orbit.
This was a pretty spectacular day for all of us, and it was a real thrill for us to get to see the Mir floating freely out there as it has done for so many years now, and after all the training and the preparation, it seems hard to believe that we're actually there, but indeed we are.
The two ships will remain docked until July 4th, while the long-term space travelers get tested to find out how much their bodies have changed while they've been away from Earth. John Holloman, CNN reporting.
After a painfully slow and careful approach, the shuttle Atlantis is now one with the Russian Mir space station. After a wait of 2 decades, Americans and Russian spacecraft have met again in peace. It is a story best told by the pictures of the historic meeting.
Say again, Norm, the music's a little loud. This is only Russian music. Very entertaining.
Atlantis Houston, you have a go for approach and docking on time.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dave. We copy. Go for approach and docking on time. I tell you what, that is quite an inspiring sight, watching the shuttle come up this close. Yeah, you guys look good too. We are so lucky that we get to be the ones to do this. Yeah, I was just thinking about that. There are a lot of folks following this, I'm sure, on the ground, and by golly, we're one of very few people who could say we were actually here when it happened.
Flight controllers here standing by for contact and capture of the two vehicles against one another.
Houston, Atlantis, we have capture.
Copy, capture.
With the capture initiated between Atlantis and Mir, 20 years after Apollo-Soyuz, a U.S. spacecraft and a Russian spacecraft are once again joined in orbit.
We've got spectacular live TV. A lot easier without gravity.
You guys are upside down. Welcome to the base. I like it. This was a pretty spectacular day for all of us, and it was a real thrill for us to get to see the Mir floating freely out there as it has done for so many years now, and after all the training and the preparation, it seems hard to believe that we're actually there, but indeed we are. Spasibo, Volodya. Skолько liet, skолько zim.
Gibson replied that it's been a long time since Apollo-Soyuz. the first docking between international spacecraft 20 years ago. Gibson said, we will build cooperation based on friendship into the future, and this is a very important step along the way.
During the long approach, Russian officials said they had been literally knocking on wood for good luck just in case.
Деятельностью совместно с экипажем СТС-71. Мы очень рады, что стыковка прошла очень успешно. Вся мировая общественность наблюдала за этим. Все следили, наверное, каждый волновался, как это все дело пройдет. Но было настолько...
We're now getting a statement from the head of the Russian crew, and there is no translation.
Мне хотелось бы сказать большие слова благодарности всем тем людям, ученым, специалистам, конструкторам, которые принимали участие и принимают участие в этой программе, которые осуществили эту стыковку и продолжают выполнять вместе с нами этот полет. Спасибо вам большое.
Я очень рад участвовать в программе, которая очень красиво выполняется. Вчера был великолепный день, и невозможно...
10 astronauts and cosmonauts are celebrating their first full day in space together by exchanging gifts. The crews of Atlantis and Mir will swap medallions and replicas of their spacecraft. Their ships docked Thursday, almost exactly 20 years after the first joint American-Soviet mission.
Очень большая подготовительная работа всех специалистов на Земле.
The astronauts and cosmonauts have gathered around the cameras of the Atlantis, where we're now seeing, for celebrations and their ceremonies. About a half an hour ago, they took calls from U.S. Vice President Al Gore and Russian Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin, both watching from Moscow.
Сейчас, когда выглядываешь из иллюминатора и видишь два очень больших корабля, которые механически соединены, но это очень приятно смотреть и приятно осознавать.
We'll have more news in a moment. Stay tuned.
4 cosmonauts are still flying together aboard the linked-up shuttle Atlantis and the Russian space station Mir. About an hour ago, the crew members exchanged gifts of flowers and candy to memorialize the flight. Then they got started on 2 days of experiments. The first docking of the two spacecrafts went off without a hitch yesterday.
U.S. and Russian space crews are spending their first full day together in orbit after completing Thursday's historic link-up of the Space Shuttle Atlantis and Russia's Mir space station. CNN's John Holliman joins us now with more. Hi, John.
I'll tell you, these astronauts had such a rough day yesterday, doing the docking, shaking hands, getting together. Now they are involved in the real hard work of this mission. It's been a significant morning for the astronauts and cosmonauts aboard the Atlantis MIR combination. The docked shuttle and space station continue the history-making odyssey 200 miles above the Earth. In the past few hours, the two crews have swapped gifts in a traditional ceremony. The Mir crew offered bread and salt, while the shuttle astronauts and cosmonauts offered fresh oranges and grapefruit, along with flowers and chocolate. There were some dignitaries on the ground who offered congratulations. U.S. Vice President Al Gore and Russian Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin called from Moscow, where the two are negotiating future science and technology cooperation agreements.
Hey, Hoot, this is Vice President Al Gore. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mr. Vice President. Good morning.
Well, good morning to you. Viktor Stepanovich Chernomyrdin and I are here seeing you right in front of us on the wide screen, and we want to say congratulations on the historic success. You made that approach look so easy that I think you're now the envy of aviators around the world.
The shuttle has 4 onboard computers. One of them failed overnight. The crew is replacing it with a spare, and the information stored in the broken computer's memory bank wasn't lost, we're told. Today, the Space Lab doctor's office is being prepared for its 3 patients. Mir crew members Norm Thagard, Vladimir Dezhurov, and Gennady Strekalov will start the most intense physical exams they've ever taken to find out how 4 months in weightlessness has changed their bodies. We'll peek inside and see how it's going a little bit later today.
Thank you very much, John. And now we go back to Patricia.
Tradition in Russia to bring flowers to your host in odd numbers only.
Workday for the astronauts and cosmonauts flying 400 kilometers above the Earth. But they took a little break to celebrate the historic link-up of the American space shuttle with the Russian space station. The crews exchanged gifts ranging from medals and watches to fresh fruit and guitar strings. They all crowded into Mir to take a congratulatory phone call from the Russian Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin and the U.S. Vice President Al Gore.
We want to say congratulations on the historic success. You made that approach look so easy that I think you're now the envy of aviators around the world.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. It's a real pleasure to be here with you this morning, and we're very honored to have the opportunity to say hello to you. I had an awfully good crew on board Atlantis, and there's an awfully good crew over here aboard the Mir, and together we managed to make this all work.
Well, Space Shuttle Atlantis docked with Mir on Thursday. Atlantis is scheduled to head back to Earth next Tuesday and take the old Mir crew home. And this is only the second time in history that US and Russian spacecraft have linked up, but it won't be the last. There will be 6 more joint missions over the next 2 years.
Greatest event in space for 25 years. Yesterday afternoon, we brought you the first breathtaking pictures as the American space shuttle Atlantis gently inched its way towards the Russian space station Mir. The docking of 2 100-ton spacecraft was one of the most complicated maneuvers ever performed in space. But shuttle commander Hoot Gibson made it look easy. The official end of the space race. And this new era of cooperation between the Americans and the Russians should make ambitious projects like the giant space station Alpha a reality. The latest news on board Mir shuttle is that all is well. This morning, the crews even had time to exchange gifts and rehearse their next rendezvous. There'll be 6 more dockings in the next 2 years.
Looks like another perfect docking.
Great day.
The wake-up music from ground control this time is appropriately in Russian. Music in the morning is a tradition in the U.S. space program, and now cosmonauts who are part of the combined U.S.-Russian space crew are part of it. The Russian space station Mir and the U.S. space shuttle Atlantis are locked in orbit, circling the globe as part of a joint mission. The 10-person crew is the largest in space history. A short while ago, CNN's John Holloman chatted with the Earthlings.
This is a question for Ellen Baker. I know you've just started your medical tests on Norm and the 2 long-duration cosmonauts. Any surprises in the first few hours of tests that you've performed?
Not really. We're running some fairly routine tests, but they're all on folks who've been in a fairly unroutine environment, and really there are no surprises. And I will say that some of the tests that we're doing on board the shuttle are the same tests that Norm and Volodya and Gennady have been doing on board the Mir, though less frequently over the last 3.5 months.
Okay. Question for Greg Harbaugh. I've been listening to you talk on the two-way radio air-to-ground this morning about a lot of different things that have been going on up there, including this problem with the alarms that wake everybody up in the middle of the night. Are those problems a big deal or just a minor inconvenience for you?
I think they're a minor inconvenience, John, and my only comment that you may have overheard this morning was we had a computer fail the other day, and I was in a little bit
bit of discussion with the folks on the ground wanting to make sure that since we recovered that computer and we're now using it again, that they had full confidence in it to ensure that it would stay up overnight so that we wouldn't have to be awakened in the night sleep shift. And they're analyzing that today, and we'll have another discussion about it before we go to bed tonight, but if they think it's good enough, that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
And it's not a problem in any case. If we wake up, we have to deal with something, we can do that, and we do it quickly, and then we turn around and go right back to sleep, so it's no big deal.
Greg, you and the flight deck crew just completed a series of leak tests on the tunnel where you fired the thrusters to see if this thing was going to break apart or spring a leak while you were doing some thruster firings. How'd that go?
I thought it went great. Everything looked super. You could tell there was something going on. It looked like there was a very small amount of deflection at the tips of the solar rays on Spectre, which we were watching very closely. But in terms of structural integrity, it looked great. As far as we can tell so far, the hatch interface is very tight. No problems.
Over the next days, crew members will transfer cargo between Atlantis and Mir, and they'll conduct scientific and medical tests. Coming case, they fell back to sleep. Another wake-up call for astronauts and cosmonauts in space. The space station Mir and the U.S. shuttle Atlantis are connected, circling the globe. The 10-person crew, the largest in space history, took some time out to talk with CNN an hour. A new crew took control of the Russian space station Mir on Saturday. 2 Russian cosmonauts and their colleagues will remain there for the next 3 months. 3 members of the previous crew have already been transferred to the U.S. shuttle Atlantis, which is stocked with Mir. They woke up to Russian music on Saturday. Atlantis' 5-day mission is the first of 7 planned link-ups with Mir over the next 2 years. Earlier, CNN's John Holloman spoke with the space crew and asked about the effects of weightlessness.
The Russians have had folks up for long-duration space flights, so they have a number of recommendations, and I tried to follow most, if not all of them. We wear some devices around our upper thighs that are supposed to help with the problem of fluid redistribution after return to Earth. We exercise 2 times a day, and I actually, for many days, exercised a full hour, and that's actual time, either turning on a bicycle or running on a treadmill or walking on a treadmill. And in addition to that, they also use a device that folks may not be familiar with called a lower body negative pressure device. We've used it many times in the past to evaluate the status of the heart in zero-G. The Russians actually use it for training, thinking that it helps people with, again, the problem of orthostatic hypotension, with medical term, but in practical terms, that means when you stand up, the tendency to feel like you're going to pass out and fall over. And what that does is you get inside a device that completely encloses the lower half of your body. A differential pressure is created and actually sucks the blood into the legs to create the same sort of distribution of blood in zero-G that the normal person would have standing in 1G. I've done all those things, and I hope it helps, and I guess I'll find out in about a week.
That was CNN's John Holloman interviewing astronauts and cosmonauts aboard the joined spacecraft.
The linked U.S. space shuttle and Russian space station glide gracefully above the Earth. Stay with us. The weekend for the space travelers aboard the U.S. shuttle Atlantis and Russian space station Mir linked together in Earth orbit. This is the view of Mir from Atlantis before that link-up on Thursday. There are 10 astronauts and cosmonauts aboard the 2 craft. They're working together, moving cargo and conducting experiments. American Norman Thagard and 2 Russian cosmonauts have been on Mir since March. Sunday marks their 110th day in space. They're spending much of the weekend undergoing extensive medical tests in preparation for their return to Earth.
But before they hit dirt, they're undergoing a series of medical tests to find out how weightlessness has affected them. For one thing, Norman Thagard lost 13 pounds, but he said the biggest change he's noticed has been in his attitude. He says he appreciates the Earth and his family a lot more.
They are conducting medical research on board Russia's Mir space station and the U.S. space shuttle Atlantis to see how the crew have been affected by weightlessness. The astronauts Norm Thagard and 2 Russian cosmonauts have been orbiting the Earth for more than 100 days. The 2 spacecraft are connected 300 kilometers above the Earth. Mir and Atlantis will separate on Tuesday, and Atlantis will carry 6 Americans and 2 Russians back to Earth.
Astronauts are racing to complete as many medical tests as possible. This is the final full day for joint operations by the crews of the U.S. space shuttle Atlantis and the Russian space station Mir. Coming up in about an hour, we'll be carrying a live news conference from orbit. From Russia and the United States get a good look at the world as they prepare for a live press conference from space. We'll bring that down to earth for you in just a few minutes, along with the day's other news. Conference from orbit by the Mir and Shuttle Atlantis astronauts. It's scheduled to begin any moment. Please stay with us for that live event. By for a press conference from orbit by the Mir and Shuttle astronauts. You can see them now. They're spending their last full day in orbit. They're about to speak to us down here on Earth. We're waiting to bring you live coverage of that event when they begin. Now we go to live coverage of the conference from space. The 10 U.S. and Russian spacefarers spending their last day together. Commander Hoot Gibson starting the conference from the Atlantis MIR docking joint vessel.
How do you think that this mission will affect or maybe sway detractors of the space station, and should it for that matter? What's your message to the American people after this flight?
Well, I've been real impressed with the fact that the things that we did on this mission are exactly the sorts of things that we need to do with Space Station, and I guess in the opinion of the crew here, things have flowed pretty smoothly. Certainly the rendezvous and docking, all of the mechanisms, all of the machinery that had to operated in spectacular function, and I think we've done a pretty good dry run for the sorts of things that we would need to do with an international space station, and so I think I speak for all of us when I say we feel pretty good about the way this mission has gone and what it portends for future space station.
This is Marcia Dunn of the Associated Press for Dr. Thagard. The sacrifice that astronauts' families make is being talked about. Please discuss that with us, what you've missed back home and how you plan to make it up to your family when you return.
Well, first of all, I will admit that I owe them a large debt. I, after all, at the end, get to fly in space, and they don't, but they make the same sacrifice of separation that I do. First of all, we plan to take a vacation the first moment that that's possible. It was not the first time we've done this. I spent a year in Vietnam, so this is just another 4 months.